Hi, I'm Suki.
And I'm Claire.
Welcome to Getting Psychic, where you can listen to us use ourselves to test the theory that anyone can get psychic.
Hi, Suki.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Patty.
We got Yoda today. We're here with Patty Davis.
It's the best.
Hi, Patty.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for having me guest. I'm so honored to be your first guest on the podcast.
We are so
You're going to be our only guest. We're just going to interview you every week.
We're never, ever going to have anyone else.
Oh, it's just me?
Forever.
No, maybe we'll find space in our heart for someone else. But for now,
it's just you.
Here we are.
Just you.
I'm excited to dive in.
Oh my gosh, it's our pleasure. This is going to be interesting having we're already
jumping on top of each other. It's great.
So we'd like to introduce Patty Davis, our friend, mentor, and an amazing intuitive psychic medium from Humboldt County in California. You can find Patty at wingandether.com and on her podcast with her co-host, Jude, Spirit Speakers. Now let's dig in. So I think really because this podcast is about getting psychic, we want to dig into your origin story and your history as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And we want to learn about your background and psychic history. But before we dig into that, can we start with you telling us about your current practice?
Wait, hold on. I have a question before that. My question before that is, Patty, do you believe that anyone can be psychic?
I believe that everyone is psychic. We just need to recognize how we perceive information, how it works, trust it, believe in it, and that will allow it to grow.
Beautiful.
So,
thank you.
Can you tell us about your daily practice as a medium? Do you do readings every day? And what is your goal when you're doing readings for people?
I don't work every day. I try not to work every day, but it feels like I work every day. I do readings like 4 days a week. I teach classes. We have the podcast, Spirit Speakers podcast. And so this is my business. So I have work hours and non-work hours. At least I try to have work hours and non-work hours. And my work hours is when I see clients and do readings. I teach classes. We record our podcast. And then in my non-work hours, I'm usually doing spiritual stuff anyway. Like all night long, I'll be dreaming of spiritual stuff. And I wake up to pee and be like, please, just give me a freaking break. Can we just let me just dream about dogs and popsicles, or something like that? So it's a continual thing in my life. It's happening all the time. It's not like I have spiritual times, non-spiritual times, but I do have work times and non-work times. And when I do readings for people, I ask people to bring a list of questions because I personally like to have an idea of what they're looking for in a reading. Some people may come in wanting really practical advice about a relationship or health or money. And other people might be like, no, I need to connect with my spirit guides. I need to understand what these visions are that I'm seeing. So readings can go in a lot of different ways. And I just am asking that everybody leaves with the questions to all their answers and more, feeling positive and empowered is my thing that I put out and ask for, my intention.
Yeah. So one of my questions was going to be, can you turn off your psychic abilities?
I don't think you can turn it off, but I took psychic classes for about 14 years, 13 and a half years or something. The reason I did that is I've been very psychic and open my entire life. And it got to a point where I needed to be able to turn it off. I needed to be able to differentiate in what was just a human fear or anxiety and what was a premonition. My daughter all started, my daughter was going on a field trip out on a crab boat and I was panicking. And I was kind of like, am I panicking because I'm a mom and my 4-year-old is going on a boat in the ocean? Or am I panicking because I'm a psychic and I'm getting a premonition that she should not go? So for me, even though I have these gifts and had had them my entire life, I needed to have a better understanding of them. I needed to put boundaries in place so that I could have a life that wasn't totally interrupted by ghosts and visions and things like that, and just find a place of balance with that.
Yeah.
Balancing the physical and the spiritual.
I'm curious, was that more of a premonition or a mom?
Well, she went
moment?
on the boat and she survived, so it was a mom moment.
Yeah. So we want to know first more about your origin story. Like, I've heard you say that you had a very psychic father. I wanted to know what your first psychic experiences were like, and was he helpful with that? Was having psychic people around helpful for you?
You know, it's so interesting looking back on it. When you live in this world, my dad was really psychic, and it was just part of our everyday life. And when you live in that world, it's the norm, so you don't think to ask
Hmm.
questions, kind of thing. Like if I could go back now, my dad's dead. If I could go back now, I would ask so many questions. And I know a little bit of his backstory and a little bit about experiences my mom had, around his psychic abilities before I was born. But he got premonitions all the time. We would plan on something and he would say, "Oh, it's not gonna happen," or, "Oh, the weather's gonna cancel the baseball game," or, "Oh, so and so's about to call." Ring, the phone rings, that kind of thing. So that happened all of the time. And then there were a few big things mixed in where, like, we were a lower middle class family, and we would plan a big vacation, like, every 3 years was what we could afford. And one year we had this big driving vacation to go to Kansas and Minnesota from California to visit our relatives. And he woke up in the morning and said, "We can't go." And my mom said, "Okay." And we canceled the trip. He also did things like he predicted his brother's death, exactly how his brother was going to die, and really begged his brother not to go on this hunting trip. His brother went. His family thought he was nuts. He went and he was killed and shot exactly where my dad
Oh,
said he was going to be shot and killed. So there were big things that happened, and there were many, many, many little things. The phone would ring and he would say who it was. He would predict what we were going to do on the weekend, what the weather was going to do, who was going to do what. That type of thing happened all of the time. So it was just the norm
yeah.
for us. And so we didn't ask a lot of questions about it. And then as we got a little bit older, I had kids and I was busy, and he divorced my mom and moved out into the desert. And so those conversations kind of ended. But he did share a lot of ET experiences he had out in the desert with me, which was kind of trippy.
Cool.
So it was just the norm. And then I have two brothers. We all ended up having psychic gifts in different
Hmm.
ways. We all have it, but in different manners. It's manifested differently from each other. So for me, I grew up with it. It was the norm. It didn't scare me. However, my dad was he was raised really religious, Southern
Hmm.
Baptist, and this type of thing was, considered
Yeah.
evil, and so he didn't really have any support. When he spoke about it, his family worried about him, took him to church more, that
Yeah.
type of thing. But he was very afraid of the devil and Satan. So anytime anything dark would come up, he would shut down. And that's what he said, is that early on in his life, he saw too much and shut it down, is what he said. So I used to think, wow, if this is shut down, like, can you imagine if you
Yeah.
weren't, what you would be doing or picking up
Yeah.
on?
So when did your psychic abilities start to happen? Did you have to pursue it, or did you just kind of start experiencing stuff?
Well, I took a big turn around 9 years old. I was at the grocery store with my mom, and they have all these little books and things up at the register. And there was a book on spells, witchcraft spells. And I
At the
begged her to
grocery
buy me
store?
that book. And for some reason, yeah, at the grocery store, just a little tiny thing. And I begged her to buy me the book, and she did, which I kind of question, who buys their 9-year-old daughter a witchcraft book? Or I was 8 at the time, actually. But anyway, she did. And so I took it home and I started doing spells. And I did a love spell on this boy in 3rd grade that had a crush on. I cut a piece of his hair. I don't know how I did that without him noticing it. I told him I forgot my lunchbox. I ran back in the class and cut a piece of fabric from his jacket. I made a voodoo doll of him, and he asked me to go steady just a
That's
few
all
days
it
later.
takes.
Um, and then I would do all kinds of like trying to blow out candles. I spent hours trying to blow out candles with my mind and bend spoons and that type of thing. And then I was in this funny little thing called mentally gifted minors. And in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, we chose what we wanted to study. It was kind of this new
Mhm.
thing. And so they were called contracts. I always did my contracts on things like witchcraft and voodoo, and they're kind of like, who is this girl? But anyway, I was doing one on voodoo. I made a voodoo doll of a girl that I didn't particularly like, and I will say I'm not proud of this story. And I went into the classroom, and she was on the other side of the classroom, and I stuck the needle in her stomach, and she projectile vomited
On the spot?
all over the classroom
Oh
on
my
the spot.
God.
So this girl's projectile vomiting and crying. I'm like hysterical, running up to the teacher. I stuck it in her. It's me, kind of thing. It was a huge scene. And my parents got called in, and I was no longer allowed to do anything on the metaphysics for my contracts. In fact, the next thing they made me teach the class how to make chicken soup. That was my
That's
lesson.
the natural
Yeah,
next
how
step.
sexist is that, right? So that is when my dad really sat me down and started talking to me about how careful you have
Right.
to be and about how powerful this is. And that while, his things are like tricks, and fun things, that there's another side to that, a darker side. But that's about as far as he went. But from then on, I was a little more intentional and careful about what I did. And I had amazing dreams. My family's in California. I was in Colorado. I called my mom one morning and I said, "You know what? I just had a dream that my brother, that he was jumped by a motorcycle gang." And she said, "Well, this is interesting because last night he and his friend drove their car over to the rival football stadium, and the football team was having practice. They came out in their helmets and they pushed his car over and rolled it with he and his friend inside." So in my dream, these men that were attacking him had helmets on. And so I was thinking
Yeah.
motorcycle gang, but it was
Yeah.
this. And then I thought I was having an appendicitis attack. I went to the hospital. "Yep, you're having an appendicitis attack. Blood test, blood. No, you're not having an appendicitis attack." Sent me home. And my mom called about an hour later that my brother's appendicitis had burst right about the time I went in. So this is when I really started recognizing empathy and premonitions and how I got things. And this is when things started to be a little
Yeah.
much.
Something's up.
Where it's kind of like, I need to control this. Do I really need to know all this stuff ahead of time? How is this serving me? So this was like in my 20s, and then in my 30s is when I started taking psychic classes in school, and that's what I learned to do, is to control it. And I want to be able to have lunch with a friend and not see her dead grandmother and her heartbreak from this and her sore knee,
So when
that
did
type
that
of
kind of
thing.
thing start happening for you? Like when did you start like going through life and seeing dead spirits?
Well, when I was younger, I was always very empathic and very observant. I always knew what was happening in the conversation, who was upset. Was my grandmother upset with my uncle? Was blah, blah, blah. I was just always super aware of the emotions and what was happening in the
Yeah.
adult world. And then, and also picking up on things empathically, always very sensitive around things. And that came really early. As far as seeing ghosts and dead people and those types of things, that hit more in like my, um, well, I have to say that I ran all the seances from in high school and even junior high. I was kind of the person that at the sleepovers ran all the seances and called things in. And so I picked up on stuff as early as that, but it wasn't huge.
But so when you're doing those in junior high and at sleepover parties, were you having experiences?
Totally. And we would meet in the bathroom and I would call in the witch of Mary Worth. I don't even know if Mary Worth's a real person. And we would look in the mirror and we'd say, "I believe in Mary Worth. I believe in Mary Worth." And then you'd see flames. And I saw shit like that all the time.
Did your
Now, I
friends
don't
see
know if
it?
this just happens to um some of them would say yes, some of them would cry and leave.
Yeah,
It
you'd be
was just
crying.
kind of yeah. Yeah. So yes, I was once I got educated and I could look back, I could see that I was picking up things from a very young age. I just didn't know
Yeah.
what I was
So
picking up
upon
on.
reflection, like what do you think you were actually doing when you're locking yourself in the bathroom and seeing flames in the mirror? What was that?
I think I was opening up a portal and conjuring spirits.
Yeah. What a
Yeah.
badass.
I wasn't allowed to do that after a while either. I was no longer allowed to conjure spirits in the bathroom at
Yeah. No
lunchtime.
more sleepovers with little Patty. Oh my God.
Because of the whole, going over to sleepovers and seances. Are Ouija boards real?
Did you ever use Ouija boards?
Yeah, my mom loved Ouija board. We used it all the time. There are a lot of people that have had it open up some really negative portals and had some negative energies come in. I've never had that happen. It was fun. I have an antique Ouija board hanging on my
Ugh.
wall right here. And I actually had a client come in one time and ask me to take it off the wall and put it in the other room. So, yeah. I don't have the little thingy with it that moves. It's just the board.
Mhm.
But it's from the turn of the century. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, they're real, but how much are we moving it? Like, for instance, a pendulum. I know a lot of people that I highly respect that use pendulums.
Mhm.
I can tell a pendulum what to do with no problem whatsoever,
Yeah, me
you
too.
know? So it doesn't work for me because it'll just do whatever I'm thinking or get stuck in neutral
Yeah.
forever. So it's kind of like that. I feel like, if you want it to say something, it'll move. You can move it just like we can move things with touch, just like at seances. Did you ever do that thing where you put two fingers under somebody and everybody has two fingers under them and you lift them up kind of thing? Um,
Oh
yeah, I'm
yeah,
curious
light
how
as a
that works. But
feather.
anyway, well, it's up. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
feeling sick. You are sick. I think she's dead. She is dead.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Oh my
I know.
God.
I know.
I would love to have met like
So dark.
little
Yeah.
kid Patty. So scary.
Totally. I
It
agree.
was a trip, yeah.
Yeah.
So back to the thing, I think that it can be a game and fun, but it can also open up portals to negative energy. If you are somebody that has negative energy around you, or there's an entity that's wanting to come in and kind of stalking you, something like that can totally open up that.
Okay, what was dating like as a medium?
Oh yeah.
Like, how long did you wait
And
to break
having
it to people?
friends.
Well, that too.
Totally. Friendships too. Yeah.
But I want to know, like, when you met your husband or anyone, like, how long did you wait to broach this subject?
Oh, that's a good question. Life is so funny because I can look back on times when I was super tapped in and then times when I wasn't so tapped in and then it came back again. It was always kind of there, but it wasn't always in the forefront, it was kind of in the background. Um, in high school, I didn't really share that much. In high school, you just want to be like everybody else and you don't want to stand out. In junior high, from like fourth grade to eighth grade, I did a lot of seances and that kind of stuff. And then in high school, I kind of backed off of it a little bit. So I shared that stuff with men right away because if they don't like it, I want to know about that
Yeah.
right away and send them on their way.
Right.
So I shared that right away. I mean, I think this is one of those things where you need to know your audience, read your audience. Like we were at one of my husband's work parties with all these men, there was an older man retiring. I didn't know any of these people. Somebody says, "Patty, what do you do?" And my husband says, "She talks to dead
Oh,
people,"
God.
and I kicked him under the table. You need to read your audience because I think we want to be clear about what we do and feel empowered. However, why would you share that in a group that's not going to accept that?
Yeah.
That is going to be detrimental to your well-being. So I think that's kind of the same thing growing up. I had to know my people, who could accept it, who couldn't, when it was safe to talk about it, when it wasn't. So it varied a lot through different time periods and with different groups of people. Like I had a group of friends that knew about this and a group of friends that didn't.
Yeah.
Being so empathic and connecting in so deeply with people, did you have, once you had friends who like knew you could do this, did you have the people that would just try and abuse it? Like not intentionally, but just be like, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this. Or like try and pull more information from you that, and eventually you're like, you have to go away from me. Like, did it change your friendships?
It changed some of my friendships in as far as depth. Like, to sit and talk about what we're going to make for dinner and what's on sale at the grocery store and that type of thing, was hard when I'm seeing ghosts, to have conversations like that. So there were those friends that I couldn't really share this with, and I ended up kind of shifting away from them just because it's a huge part of me and who I am.
Yeah.
But my true friends do not do that to me.
Yeah.
My good friends don't ask me questions like that all the time, or they'll say, "Can I get a reading with you?" Or "Do you mind if I ask you about something?" but there are a lot of people in my life that consider themselves my friend that know nothing about me.
Yeah.
So those are the people that you need to be careful with. They're like, well, she's my friend, and I can call you and ask you questions because we're friends. I'm like, but are we friends? Like, you don't know what my hobbies are. You don't know how many kids I have. You don't know anything. So that is where it's a little more tricky, because those that are truly my friends respect me, and they see this as my job.
Yeah.
And they don't do that,
Mhm.
But at the same time, they have to be patient with me. Like, we'll be having lunch and I'll be kind of looking over their shoulder and they'll be like, what is behind me? And I'm like, I'm sorry, but your dead grandpa's here. What's going on with him? So they have to be patient with me around those things as well. I try not to do that to them a lot, but it does come up periodically. Or like, oh, this is a terrible story. I went to get a massage from my massage therapist, and I walk in the door and I'm like, what is going on with your second chakra? Well, she had just lost a baby. And I didn't know this. I know. It's so fucked up. So I didn't know this. And she's like, she said, I almost canceled because I'm not ready to talk about this. And I knew you were going to walk in and see that. So I just noticed this dark energy in her sacral chakra, her lower abdomen, where your womb is. And I thought she was going to say, oh, I just got over the stomach flu, or yeah, my boyfriend and I are in a fight, and she had lost a baby. Like, that's terrible. So for me, I mean, that's a huge lesson. I have to be really aware. Now, if I would have seen that and taken a moment and said, hey, should I ask her about this? Spirit would say, hell no. But I didn't do that. I walked in just being like, hey, so-and-so, what's going on in your sacral chakra? It was stupid. But yeah. So it happens on both ends. I don't think I'm a really easy friend sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like what I'm hearing is just like boundaries all around. Like, you need to
major.
You need to have your own. You need to know when to say things. Your friends need to have them. Like, it seems like extremely important.
Yeah, boundaries are huge.
What do you say when you're in that dinner with your husband's coworkers and they ask you what you do? Do you have like a fake job? Or do you say you're a counselor?
We have a business together. My husband's an electrical contractor, and we own a business, electric and solar contractor. So I will say, "Oh, we own a business together," or I will say, someone will say, "So I heard you're a psychic," and I'm like, "Oh, I teach meditation classes." I don't do that as much anymore because I've really stepped more into this. But there's a whole safety thing. I have a really clear recollections of being burnt as a witch. And so, there's a safety issue. There are still people out there that don't feel comfortable around people that are psychic or study witchcraft or anything. And there's some crazy people.
Yeah.
So this is where intuitively you need to know when it's safe, and it sucks. And it's not very often anymore that I don't feel safe to say something. But there are times when, why would I say this in this group of people when I know I'm just going to get weird feedback? I'm not going to
Totally.
talk about this to my brother-in-law, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. You can feel it energetically. You can feel yourself becoming vulnerable. And
Yeah.
And like, because you just based on the response that you're going to get. I've definitely been like, if this podcast comes up, I've been like, oh, this and that. Like, you have a podcast, what's it about? What
Hair.
just stuff.
Hair.
Yeah, right. It's about hair. We sometimes talk
crown
about
chakra.
Yeah.
It's about the crown chakra. Yeah,
Yeah,
the hair
exactly.
of the crown chakra.
I was recently doing an aura camera event, and this is just one of those weird things. Somebody, was talking to us and looking through the pictures, and was like, "So do you actually believe this shit?" And I'm like, "No. Bye." Like, it's just one of those things of, it would be the same thing, 10 years ago about acupuncture. But like, you think this works? It's like, yeah, I just studied for 4 years and a lot of money to do this. It does.
Yeah.
It's been around for 3,000 years. But it's one of those things where, when something isn't concrete, it hasn't been quote unquote proven. It's by this society. It gets so tricky to navigate with people, even with people that might believe in it, that to believe that you can do it. That like each individual can do it and that you personally can do it. It's all very interesting. I tend to, we've talked about this. I tend to like not talk about it, with people, because it just gets squirrely. People look at you weird or like, cool. Do you guys want to go to brunch? It's like that thing. You're like, all right, okay. Figuring out who you can open up to about things and who you can't. And I really feel like, and I'm curious if you're sensing this also with, like just the amount of people that want sessions with you or the amount of people that are listening to the podcast. Are you finding that something is waking up right now?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I feel like I'm being called to do this at this time for a specific purpose. There are so many people that are waking up, that are starting to recognize their own gifts and abilities. As we're shifting into the earth, shifting into this higher frequency, people are sensing that and they're feeling like, oh, I can't continue in this job, or oh, I can't continue in this relationship, or I need to have a better understanding of who I am and what these feelings are that I have. Like there are people that have been empathic, that have had anxiety and had no idea that it was because they were so empathic. When empathy is a gift, it's beautiful, but it can also, if you don't have boundaries and don't understand it and don't take precautions and don't take breaks and all of that stuff, it can be really hard on you and cause anxiety. So definitely there's a huge awakening right now. As someone said not too long ago to me, have you noticed that everybody's a healer now? And I'm like, yeah, and isn't that great? And I feel like the people that have been doing this for a while are stepping up into another role, and there's other people coming in, taking over that role. I just feel like we are continuing to um, expand, and shift into different places. So people that have been, healers for a long time are shifting into a different role of healers. I have a lot of nurses and therapists that are moving into more of, psychic work or hands-on healing or that type of thing. So yeah, definitely a huge, huge shift. I think it's really important that we own who we are and we speak our truth and that we don't hide. And sometimes there are people that don't believe in this, that we could say something, and even if they're like, that's stupid, they might go home and actually think about it or be like, maybe that's what's going on with me. They might be, kind of in the closet about it. But this is the tricky thing. There are times when you should clearly speak up, even when it's uncomfortable. And there are times when, oh no, you should not do that. So there isn't a whole intuitive piece even around that.
Yeah, for sure. Can you explain a little bit about the vibration of the earth and its shifting? What does that mean?
Okay. So there's, I'm not a science person. I'm going to totally mess this up. But there's something called the Schumann resonance, and it is actually the vibrational frequency that the earth puts out. It has been raising and changing since the early 1950s. This isn't some crazy theory. This is something that actually can be monitored, and they can watch it shift. So that has been happening. And also I feel that the energy of the planet is trying really hard to shift into a higher vibration. I was told in meditation prior to COVID that things were going to get gnarly, that there was going to be a lot of contrast being shown between the dark and the light. People that live out of greed and power, people that are motivated by love, and that it was going to be difficult, but that it was important. And sure enough, with all the political things happening in the US and COVID and all that stuff happening, and it's still happening, it really started to shift. So I feel like this is an opportunity for people to move into a state of love, move into a place of taking care of each other, and not going into theories on whether, the vaccine is good, whether the vaccine is an implant, whether it's like, let's just take care of each other and move from a place of love and take care of our planet, or we're going to go extinct. It's like, what do we need to do here? So the vibration of the planet, even though things look really dark from where we stand is raising in frequency. It's moving from a third dimension into some higher dimensional spaces. Now, our root chakra is a vibrational match, or in the past has been a vibrational match to the earth. And this is why we ground and how we ground. We connect with that vibration of the planet. We feel anchored and solid. I am a grounding maniac. I'm a very grounded person, and grounding is very easily, I can do that pretty easily. However, it all shifted for me, and I could not ground for the life of me. And then I recognized that I needed to ground from a higher frequency, because with the chakras, as we raise up through the chakras, we also raise in higher frequency. And so I started grounding in a different way. Instead of grounding into the earth, I started grounding, sending my energy around her. I started grounding from higher chakras. With working with both of you, that's something we've worked on with both of you, and it's helped too, because it's different. Things are shifting, and so the way we used to do things don't necessarily work any longer.
Yeah.
And so like I could really dive into my whole theories on where we're going and how things are moving, but that's kind of the basis of it. And, we talk about, we're going from the third dimension to the fifth dimension. And I'm like, well, what happened to the fourth dimension? I think as humans, we really like things structurally laid out and labeled in a way that makes sense.
Linear.
And so we have all these numbered things. Yeah, we're so linear. So it's kind of like things get dumbed down by spirit so we have a better understanding of it. But I just tell people, don't get so locked into all the rules or the trendy jargon or where you're supposed to be doing this. You want to go by what feels right. And sometimes that means messing around and playing a little bit and exploring, experimenting, but follow your gut and your intuition. And this is a time that we really need to use our intuition to know what's truthful, or just to know what resonates with us and what our decisions are and what feels like the right thing to do. So it's not a time of sure, we want to find leaders and we want to find teachers, but we need to really pay attention that if we're doing that, it's somebody that we resonate with, that feels right and feels in alignment. It's not about collecting information. It's about connecting with your deeper self.
Okay, so what are your psychic gifts?
Yeah. Okay, they're the Claires. They're the Claires and not the Claire Moonies. Clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance. So these are different ways in which you may perceive information. Some people are very visual. Some people get things in a direct knowing. Some people hear things. Some people sense things. I kind of work with all of them. I have a little bit of everything. And so I can see things.
Show off.
Yeah, I can see things, I can hear things, I can sense things. I get things in a lot of ways. When I do psychic readings, what I'm able to do is I can identify things in people. And I used to think when I was a kid, I thought everybody saw this. Like somebody could walk in, I'm like, oh my gosh, they've got so much sadness in them, And I thought as a kid, like you could see that there was something on the physical being that alerted you of that. And everybody'd be like, what are you talking about? Or, oh, they have a lot of fairy energy, or like, whoa, came from an ET life, or those type of things. So I can see that in somebody right off the bat, and I think a lot of this is empathy too, picking up on people's feelings and sensations. So I'm a medium. For me, what a medium is connecting with other dimensions. I can talk to dead people. I've learned a lot about spirituality from dead people, not necessarily my own family that's crossed over, just like my good friend's dad crossed, and he just spent hours with me just telling me how things are and laying it out and helping me understand. So I can connect with dead people. I can read people. I just ask for information on their behalf in readings, and spirit just starts jabbering away and telling me about them. I can read most people. There have been people that I have not been able to read. But most people I can. And then I'm super empathic, which means that I deal with a lot of anxiety. So I have really strong boundaries around that. I can be sitting across from my friend and be like, do you have a headache? Because I'll have a headache, or, pick up on those type of things. So I'm super empathic. I think that's about it.
Do you ever hear stuff?
I hear things. So this is the thing that's hard to understand. So if you're a visual person, I have seen ghosts, which means in my third eye, if I could draw it, or a person that's passed. I could draw them and tell you exactly what they look like, what kind of glasses they wore, how they dressed, how they wore their hair. And then there have been times when I have seen something with my physical eyes. Now, when I see a ghost with my physical eyes, they look almost a little holographic. Like a ghost walked through my house and I got up with a baseball bat because I was not 100% sure if this was real or not, because it was at night and there was a shadow thing. It's the same thing with hearing. I hear information and I pass that on, but then there are times when somebody will say, "Hey, Patty," or I had a ghost come in that says hello. And that was like, I look at my dogs, like, did my dog just speak? Or look around like, I'll be like, "Grant, are you home?" Like yelling at my husband. So there are times when I
Yeah.
hear things, and then there are times when I hear things. So that's the whole thing with our psychic abilities is, I saw something. Well, how did you see it? I saw it in my third eye. Like I can tell you clearly what he looked like. Or no, it just walked
Yeah.
through the room. So yes, on hearing things, but it comes in two
Yeah.
different ways,
Okay.
just like visuals.
And what
do.
about smelling things?
I have a super strong nose. Drives my family
Same.
crazy. It's like I smell cat pee everywhere I go. They're like, "What is it with you and cat pee?" But anyway, I think a lot of times, if I'm smelling a bad energy, to me it smells like cat pee, or something. But I have like smelled my dad's pipe before, or I have just like I was at a restaurant with my husband. This man came and sat behind me, and we had to move tables because there was a smell that was so bad. And my husband could not smell it. So I can't tell you if this is my sensitive nose or my ability to smell energy. It was coming across energetically as a smell.
Crazy.
So yeah, it is a little
That's
wild.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say before, like, if anybody ever wonders whether or not ghosts are real, you just have to see one and then it pretty much covers it. Like that's what happened for me. I was like, "Oh, there goes that question doesn't exist anymore."
Yeah.
Got that covered.
And then
Yes.
yeah. And then you see the ghost and you ask them who they are and they give you the lowdown, and then you really believe it.
Yeah.
Kind of
Wild.
thing. Yeah. Or I see, I had somebody that came in fairly recently, and I kept seeing a red ball, like a red child's ball, and I'm like, "Is there something with a red child's ball?" They're like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." But it kept coming in super strong, super strong. We were talking to a dead relative of hers, and she went home that night and called me and said, "I walked into my yard, and the middle of my yard is a red child's ball." So, and there's no children in her family or anything. So for me, that was a validation for her. So that type of thing. I mean, I have times when I'm like, "Is this real? Am I just full of shit? Am I, like kind of insane?" But then I'm like, "Oh, but how would I have known that this dead guy's nickname for his daughter was this? Or how would I have known this?" And then I talk myself out of it. But I have moments every once in a while too, And then I have moments where I'm driving home like, "Holy shit, what the hell just happened?" Like my life is insane, but my life is so
Yeah, like
interesting.
what?
Like there's not a dull moment.
No. Like,
But yeah.
what is my life? Yeah, that's so crazy. Okay, this is something that is going to tie us back into something we've been talking about because we've been talking a little bit about observing your thinking and kind of accessing your higher self and watching what your brain does. And we were talking last week about body death and then that your soul continues to exist. And this question came up. Do spirits think?
Oh my God. Do spirits think? What kind of spirit? So the term spirit covers a lot of things. Yeah. Can you get?
Let's make it like this. So, say I die, and then my monkey mind also presumably dies, and then I'm just like my soul. Do I think?
Well, I would say yes. And this is why my personal opinion would be yes, is that I have talked to people that have passed that actually work in that realm. Let's just call it let's call it heaven for the sake of
Sure.
having a label for it, the heavenly realm, where they will be somebody that greets people that are crossing, that helps them have a better understanding of where they are, make sure they're comfortable, that type of thing. And so, yes, they are processing what other people are going through as they're
Mm.
transitioning. They are thinking of ways to help. They are so yeah, as far as thinking as processing
Mhm.
information, 100%. Yeah.
Mm.
I'm hoping that that whole monkey mind weird thing ends, with that. I really hope
Yeah,
so.
me too.
I'm thinking yes, because if we're in a state where we're letting a lot of our baggage go and we're just in a state of love, I would think that our self-talk and that process would look totally different. And when I do talk to people that are dead, they're in a state of love. So if they say something like, I'm sorry this happened, it's not I'm sorry I wasn't a good mother. It's not like they're feeling terrible. It's kind of like out of love for you, they're apologizing for in this experience not being able to do a better job. Everything comes from a state of love. Now, if I'm reading a ghost that's kind of like, I'm really pissed about, Uncle blah blah blah. You need to tell them to back off. I'm like, oh, they have not crossed over. They're stuck or they're in limbo, because when people have crossed over, everything comes from a state of love. And they will own their shit from the human world, but it's in a place of understanding and compassion and forgiveness, and it comes from a totally different
That's
state.
so cool.
So I don't know if that answers your
Yeah, no,
question,
I think it does. I think that's
but
really interesting. But so do we call the people that haven't crossed over earthbound spirits, or is there a different name?
yeah. So that's a label for people that are stuck, that haven't been able to cross over, but it's not like here, there, or in between. There's so many different layers, and it's all so complicated, and we try to simplify it to have a better understanding. So when beings cross over, they can linger for a while. They can have a what the hell just happened moment, or they can be like, I want to make sure my loved ones are here. And that doesn't mean they're stuck. It's just they take
Mhm.
their time. And some people that have passed over are still really concerned with the human realm and wanting to be helpful and wanting to have help humans evolve, where others are like, yeah, done with that, and they go off into the one a little bit more. Earthbound spirits are people that die, that either don't know they're dead and are in a place of confusion, or in a state of self-loathing or hate, a lot of times, that they do not feel worthy of crossing over, so they're not able to make that step. Like, for instance, you might have somebody that didn't have a very good life, maybe didn't treat people well, maybe was abusive, something like that, and maybe as they die, they're thinking, oh, maybe some Christian beliefs come in. I was not a good person, I'm going to go to hell, or I'm not worthy of crossing over, and they will get stuck and they wander around, and they will come in or attach to people that are open, trying to get help, or trying to find a connection elsewhere. And this can last for a long time, or it can be brief, but they're kind of in this state. Then there are also people that will take the negative energy from this, and instead of crossing over into light, they will cross into much more of a negative, darker space. And
Mm.
they could be there for, there's no timeline. They needed to experience something else there, or weren't able to fully let that go in the
Mhm.
transition. So it's not clean cut, and it's not
Yeah.
simple. There's a lot of
Wow. So, but
yeah,
generally,
parts
if we're
to it.
accessing a spirit that's a turd, then they're probably haven't crossed over.
So there are ghosts, like
Look, turd
maybe.
spirit.
Yeah. So maybe there's a ghost of your great grandmother who people see in the house. That doesn't necessarily mean that she is an earthbound spirit. It might be that she wants to visit that house because she really loved
Mhm.
that house, or she has some attachment to this house. They're not. It's not like you're here or there. You can be back and forth, back and forth. So not every person that you see as a ghost is a stuck
Interesting.
spirit. It can kind of move into a lot of different levels.
Um, this gets confusing for me because it's like, but we don't stay. I'm not going to stay Claire Mooney in a spirit space that's the same Claire Mooney as here. Am I?
I think so. Your soul, is kind of like your home base, and you're kind of bouncing around and returning there. So every past life that you've had, every experience you have, some people call that the Akashic record, is kind of in your soul. So if I'm reading somebody that has reincarnated, I can read the life that these people had with them through their soul connection, kind of thing, to help with the mediumship. So I believe that there are certain traits that tend to follow somebody that's incarnating, over and over. Like if I read their past lives, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, that's totally happened in this life, but in a different scenario, or yeah, that's totally my personality, or this has happened. So there are aspects of ourselves that live in our soul, but I think it's more of the incarnation process, things sticking, or that's worked, or I'm going to hang on to that and just be kind of this aspect of my soul in these different experiences. So, it's really hard to wrap your head around the fact that we're all one, but we're all individuating at the same time. It's a total mind blowing thing. It's just hard, and a lot of things I'm just kind of like, yep, I'll just get that when I die. I'm
Yeah,
not going to
right.
sweat about it and
Yes.
sit in my bedroom, with a headache trying to figure this out. I'm like, yep, don't get it. I'll understand this someday, but right now I'm supposed to be here anyway, so I'm going to try to be
Yeah.
here in this
Yeah.
experience.
Wow. So you kind of have the ability, as someone that can witness and communicate with all of these spirits, like you have the ability to then figure out essentially where they are.
Well, being a human, I have my own linear
You're a
idea
human?
of how things work. You can't really
Wait a minute.
it's hard to break it's hard to break away from that, even though I will speak in linear terms. I know it's not linear. I speak in terms of your past life then and now, when there's really no such thing as time. So I think for me, talking to dead people in spirit, I think they dumb it down for me and try to simplify it as much as they can, so I can try to somewhat build an opinion or an understanding on these things. But I am so far from understanding or knowing. Like, it's so vast. I don't feel like we as humans have the ability to wrap our
Yeah.
head around much more than what we already
Yeah.
get. And I feel like we have moments. And when I have moments where I feel like I really hit a high vibrational space or travel into it, you can't translate it into words. It's not translatable. So it's kind of like, well, how do I take that and put that into words? And that happens sometimes in readings where I'm having an experience, but it's not a human experience, so I can't translate it into human words to tell someone. So I'll tell spirit, can you dumb this down for me, or can you give this to me in human language so I can try to explain it? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we've talked about this a few times, and it's kind of like a lingering getting psychic topic of interest. Like, can guides be wrong?
Guides are wrong. Oh my gosh. So I did a mentorship with these ladies. And this is what Suki's was like the whole time. Try to answer these questions like, oh my God. Just because, you ask these kinds of questions and, yeah. So I know. Okay. Okay. So let's just go into the spirit guide thing. I believe that, we're at a certain frequency and spirit is at a higher frequency, and we play with bringing those together and finding balance and living in a mutual spiritual place. And our guide system are there to kind of bridge the gap. They're a little more on our vibrational frequency, but they help us reach that. They are where an angelic being might tap in and heal us. Our guide will be like, don't do that. You're not listening to your intuition. You need to blah, blah, blah. Or giving us a cheer to cheer us on. So I think that I would be more comfortable saying, I think sometimes we may hear something incorrectly or interpret something incorrectly from our guide system. Now, most guides are not super black and white and telling you what to do. So as far as them being wrong, I think this is kind of where that comes in. If you have a guide that's really bossy and bossing you around and telling you do this, don't do that, I don't think they're a guide. You might have a guide that's a little more assertive or a little more maybe even, let's say, a little aggressive, but they are here as guidance and support, not telling you what to do. So I'm going to say no, but with that little bit of a caveat there.
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I guess then, it's like the whole big question about talking to a medium. We've talked about this, like I come to you, you talk to my guides and ancestors, they give you information, you process it. I am curious to know, like, the different ways in which information comes to you from when you ask a question, and then you give that information back to me, and then I process it.
Okay.
So, I just think it's so interesting. There's so many places where things could be misinterpreted, right?
Oh my God. Well, wait, can I just real quick? This is so interesting because I have had sessions where I remember being told very specific things and I roll with that. And then, like a year later, I re listen to the recording and I'm like, holy shit, that is absolutely not what they said. Somehow I heard that. It's fascinating. It's
Totally.
fascinating.
Yeah. I went to a psychic with a friend of mine, and we, at the time, this is dating me, you would take your little cassette and put it in her machine and tape it and take your little cassette home. And we went to the same psychic, and my friend is like, oh, she's full of shit. It made no sense at all. No, no, no. She played the tape, and I was just like, oh my God, this is so spot on and so accurate. But my friend was not in a place where she could hear that or accept that.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
so I think that happens a lot with the translations of things too, is that you're hearing things the way you're able to hear it, or you might hear something you want to hear and not pay attention to what you didn't want to hear. But also, we are speaking through our filters. Like I may see something like Claire, maybe I see a taco around you. And for me, yeah, for me, it's like, oh, yeah, for me, it's that to me, oh, I see a taco. Oh, a taco means celebration and blah, blah, blah. For you, it might be a taco means that really, really bad family outing where people were throwing food at each other and blah, blah, blah. So I have to work really hard not to use my own emotions around things or how I feel around things when I'm reading other people. I have to try to be really, really impartial so that
Wow.
and even though I am still doing that, I still, it's hard to totally filter yourself out completely unless you're channeling. So I may see visions of things. I may get words. I ask people questions. Like I read somebody yesterday and I was feeling a really like a strangling in my throat, and I'm like, you have a block in your throat chakra. I'm like, do you have thyroid things? And she's like, yes. I'm like, okay, let's do this. So I asked, you have thyroid? Because to me, this sensation feels like thyroid to me for some reason, and I'm not a doctor. I don't have thyroid. I don't know what my thyroid feels like. But so I was using, and that's why I asked. So sometimes I ask questions of people during the readings because I want to make sure I'm getting the right information that pertains to them. Okay. So I'm seeing things, I'm getting information, I'm hearing words, and then every once in a while I will just start talking and it'll be like la 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 la, like no breaks. And it's kind of like, it's not that I am building a narrative like, oh, I think this taco may mean blah blah blah. It's that I'm channeling, and so it's flowing right through me. Channeling, I fully trust because that's not coming. I'm not putting together a narrative. I'm not trying to understand it. It's just flowing through. So there are different, and then there's physical channeling when you allow something to take over your body. So there are different ways of getting that information and passing it on to people. And then another thing is, I might be wrong. I'm not going to tell somebody to do something really scary or dangerous, even though I may see that they're going to survive this, because I don't want to be responsible for that. And what if I'm wrong? I'm not 100%, but I could be right. And you could be like, yeah, don't want to hear that, or I could be wrong. And so, Claire, maybe you just didn't resonate with some of that information. And that's the important thing. I've had a lot of readings, and I never resonate 100% with the reading, even if it's a really good reading. There are things that I'm like, yeah, that doesn't suit, and I let that go. And you have to do that. If you go into a reading expecting things to be 100% on, you're just going to be disappointed because there's so many factors at play here. But if you listen to what resonates with you, what you're able to hear and receive at that time, then you'll get the most out of it. So there's so many different factors.
Yeah, that's interesting. See, when I used to talk to um my baby's first psychic, like she was really cool, and I would only just ask her about business stuff. But then kind of around when my sister introduced me to your podcast, and you came into my life, or I came into your life, invaded your life. um it it really started to evolve, and it was like we did I was able to make an appointment with you, which I don't think is like possible anymore, so don't even try, kids. But it was so much more about empowerment, uh and I just had such a, I mean, like, sure, I did ask stuff about a specific situation in business, but I really do think like getting readings can be so much more about self development and understanding than just being like asking somebody that knows more than you do to give you a higher perspective on like just technical life things.
So my whole thing is empowering people. That's what I want to do. If we all felt empowered, can you imagine how different this world would be? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So and this is why, when I'm burning my Palo Santo and clearing the room, I'm calling in my guides and my client's guide. I'm asking that they receive that. Okay, how do I put this? I'm calling my guides and my client's guides. I ask that they receive the answers to all their questions and more, and leave feeling positive, hopeful, and empowered. And I the same, because I want to leave that meeting feeling that way as well.
Yeah.
So I have worked with people that have gone to a psychic. One person had young children. The psychic told her husband was going to die within 3 years. She better prepare. Now, how is that empowering? I'm sorry. And
I don't know.
there's this little thing called manifestation, like if you hear this type of thing, you can manifest bad shit happening, to you. And, I had another client who had young children, and she went to a totally different psychic, and they told her that her husband was bipolar. He was going to have an emotional break and steal her children and take them back to Africa, and she would never see them again. Now, how are you not going to empower a negative relationship or fear around your husband, or not manifest that hearing these things? So I don't want that kind of information. People come in and they're like, I don't want to know if I'm going to be in a car accident. I'm like, I don't either. How is that going to serve
Yeah.
us? But Spirit has said to people, hey, you need to be a little more present when you drive. And I'll say, do you drive a white truck? And they'll be, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm seeing a white truck and a dirt road. You need to slow down on the gravel road. And they're like, yeah, I live on a gravel road. You need to slow down and take care of that. I had one woman who was pregnant, and I said, oh my God, it's going to be amazing. But the only thing is I feel like you're going to get mastitis in your left breast, And so I see her a year later. Everything was great, but she got mastitis in her left breast. And she's like, so this is my question for you. Did you premonition that, or did you mention that? And so I manifested that. And I'm like, good question. Like it
Yeah,
could
right.
go either way. No one knows. So I only ask for positive information because I want people to leave feeling good. We don't want to pay and go spend some time and leave feeling like shit. That's not going to help
Yeah.
anybody. So with me, I tend to point out your gifts, and I tend to point out things that you can do to feel better. And, if something negative were to come through, Spirit would suggest a tool. I don't want to just tell you something like, oh yeah, you have anxiety. I'm like, oh, I'm picking up an anxiety. And my client will be like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, let's ask spirit if there's any tools or ways to help. And then spirit will suggest ways or tools to help. The only time
You're not just like, oh, bummer.
Yeah, me too.
No one knows.
Sucks. In my readings, the only time something negative comes out is if we look at a past life, because you may be supposed to see how you passed in this past life or something which might help you understand a phobia you have in this life or something that you're going through. And that can be a little gnarly, but I warn people ahead of time and make sure they're up for it. So I don't even remember the original question. I think I went off there on a tangent, but that's...
I love it. Whatever. Yeah. That's the job of getting psychic. Just rant.
Yeah.
But I do think that's like fantastic advice for the psychics because, you know, as people that are listening are trying to like develop any skills that they might have.
So ethics. Okay. Yeah. Sure. That's what I was just going to try. And I was just going to dive into that there are people that use spirituality as an excuse to be a jerk. Like spirit told me that I should tell you you're a bitch. That I would not tell you that, but spirit,
I'm making that t-shirt.
Yes,
oh my God.
Says it's important for you to know this information, that type of thing. Or my guides are telling me blah, 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 and I'm like, that's bullshit. So there are people that use spirituality as an excuse, and you need to be aware of that bullshit and not do that.
So unfair that people that are turds get to be psychic.
Yeah, I know.
I don't approve.
So ethics. Maybe many of you have seen the what is she called? The psychic something Island, not Rhode Island psychic. The psychic.
Oh, Long Island Medium?
Yeah, the Long Island Medium.
Long Island Medium.
Yeah, she's amazing. Amazing. I have utmost respect for this woman. However, I personally don't feel you should be accosting people in a supermarket and bringing up their dead relative. Now,
does she?
Yeah, that's what she does. Yeah, she will be out and be like, her mouth starts twitching. And then she's like, I'm sorry, I need to tell you, your grandmother's with you, blah, blah, blah. Now, if somebody comes to me and wants to talk to their dead grandmother, I have permission to do this. Accosting somebody in a store, what if they had a shitty relationship with this grandmother? What if this grandmother was murdered? What if they didn't get to see them? We don't know if their relationship is positive and if this is going to make them feel wonderful or if this is going to bring up something terrible. I feel like our dead relatives know when connecting with us is going to help us in our grieving process and when it might be detrimental to our grieving process. So this is why sometimes you go see a medium and your loved one comes in and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they know better than us. I might be able to tell Suki, I might be able to tell you about a dead relative and it helps you like, oh, she's still good. I feel so much better. Or I might tell Claire and it brings up pain or it takes her back in her process. So there's ethics on that. If someone asks for information, then you tell them. I have had times when spirit's just knocking on my head and I'm like, no, I'm at lunch. And they're knocking on my head and I'm like, no, I'm at lunch. And they just will not let me be. So I will say, okay, am I really supposed to share this information with them? And they're like, yes, yes, yes. So then I will ask my friend, I'm sorry, spirit's banging on my head. Are you okay if I share this information with you and get their permission? There have been times when spirit has been really wanting me to share something and I've decided not to because I was uncomfortable with it or it didn't seem appropriate no matter what and that's hard for me not to listen to spirit because I feel like I have a pretty strong connection that I know when it's me and when it's them. But you have to be careful about that. Make sure that somebody's ready to hear this. Make sure that it's appropriate. Make sure that you are not doing things like channeling without physical channeling without support, and that you are learning proper ways to protect yourself and cleanse energy. We don't just open the door one day, I'm a psychic, whammo, because there's a lot of stuff out there that you do not want coming into your space. There are earthbound spirits, there are entities, there are negative energies. You can just pick up on the fear in the collective and it can be overwhelming. So this is something that it is important to be trained in for your own safety. And then you use ethics in what you share with people. Like, for instance, I have occasionally seen something like an accident happening with someone. It's like it made it wiggle through my filter. I do not tell them that.
Mm.
I will say, there's no way I'm telling them that. Can you give this to me in an easier way to share it? And Spirit will give it to me in an easier way to share it. So those are the ethics. You just don't walk around
Yeah.
doing that, because you don't know what other people's journeys are. You don't know where they're at. When people sit down in front of me, I am clearing. I'm asking for their guides to be present. I'm asking that both of us are protected. I'm setting the energy of the space. I am moving up into a super high vibration. I have my own boundaries. Like, there's a lot of prep and rules and boundaries and stuff going in place that you don't just willy-nilly.
Yeah.
And it's none of your business. You don't
And
eavesdrop on
it's
people
none of your
energetically.
business. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't eavesdrop on people energetically. I want to get enough information that helps me navigate this life. Like, I want to meet somebody and be like, yeah, they are not honest. I'm going to be careful with what I say to them. I don't want to see their whole life story, and I'm not going to ask for that, because that's not ethical. I
Yeah.
if I don't want to hear about some terrible natural disaster that's going to kill hundreds of people the day before, if I can't help somebody or do something about it, because that's not going to serve me. I'm going to be in a horrible vibrational state for 24 hours until it comes out on the news, and then I'm going to feel really bad again. So I ask
Yeah.
for, I'm always open for anything urgent or anything important, but I only want information that I can use, or I can use to help somebody, or that is helps me navigate this life. So that's my
Are
filter.
you Yeah. So are you setting these boundaries daily, or what are you
So
doing?
in the beginning, I set these boundaries daily. Every time I would meditate, I would go through my whole spiel about, I'm only letting in what's positive, kind, helpful, loves me, no, 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 all this stuff. Now it's almost like when, like, after you ground for a while, you can just kind of like whoosh, tap in, or in meditation you could just drop in right away. Now I just kind of, it lives around me. I state my boundaries around clients. If something comes up, I will be like, oh hell no, and I'll go over my intentions again in my head. But after a while of doing that regularly, it's just part of my world now. Like, I feel like I'm constantly protected. There are situations where I up my protection, and I set intentions daily. Sometimes my intention is, oh yeah, I have extra protection today, and people leave me the hell alone, and my day goes by quick.
Mm-hmm.
Other times it's like, oh, I want, I hope my clients are magical and fun, and I want to learn something new, and I want the world to surprise me today. So I will go with my own, where I am energetically, with my intentions to kind of help match that. So I do set daily intentions, but the big ones just become a regular. And like, the minute I call my guides in, all that stuff comes along with it.
Do you do that in meditation, or do you just do it in your thinking?
Both. When I started, I did it in meditation. And now I will just, I might be driving and be like, whoa, what the hell was that? Like, I'll drive through some energy field and be like, whoo, super protected. Last night I could not sleep, and I was like, I don't know what this is that's keeping me awake. And I went through all my protection again, and I visualized it, my safety bubble and all of that. So there's a general thing in place that I started in meditation, and then I also state things outside of meditation periodically as needed.
How important is meditation in your life and practice?
So meditation is one of those things where there's a lot of different types of meditation. Sitting and quieting your mind is something that I can try to do for hours and just end up being pissed off and frustrated, because I have a really active monkey mind. So I'm like, do I want to make myself mad? Do I want to move into self-hate? Sure, let's meditate. So no, I don't meditate in that form of meditation, although I really am envious of people that are able to do that. Meditating for me is taking time out of our monkey mind, of our rote life, of just being here by this time, getting dinner ready, all that stuff, and knowing that there's more to life than that. And so this can be sitting outside and just listening to the birds, chirp. That can be a meditation. Doing some deep breathing can be a meditation. Quieting your mind and calling in your guide system can be a meditation. I most of my meditations, I call them working meditations, where I will say, I call in my guides. My main guide is a monk, And I will say, okay, this is what's up. What am I supposed to? And he's like, stops me and makes me sit, he puts his hands in prayer and bows, and he makes me take a few deep breaths and just quiet my mind. And then I'll peek over my hands. So can I ask now? And he'll be like, no. And I'm like, damn it. Then I quiet my mind. And then I'm like, okay, I know the answer to my question now. Or I may be like, okay, how I have this going. What should I do about this? Or how can I work through this? Or I would like to astral travel and fly for a while, that kind of thing. And so those are my meditations. I have moments where I can drop into what I call the void, which is just a state of, some people call it everything, some people call it nothing. It's just a total separation from my physical body and my physical life. I'm in dark, but it's the yummiest dark. And the only thoughts in my mind is, wow, this is amazing. I should come out. I don't want to come out. Wow, this is amazing. That's the only thought process. And I can't sustain it for an hour, but there's no time there either. So I kind of use that as an excuse. But for me, I think maybe that's what people are able to do when they can move into that space of totally quieting their mind. And I would so love to be able to do that more, but that's just not really my personality. And so I
feel
just
that.
I just cherish those moments, and sometimes I will go there purposely when I need it, and sometimes I can drop right in, sometimes I can't. Sometimes I'll be like, I'll call one of my guides and be like, help, I can't do this, I really need this, and they'll assist me with that.
They're
So
like,
my
no.
personal meditation goal is to be able to go into the void more. But there's many different ways of meditating. There's walking meditation. Some people do better. They sit and try to meditate where if they got up and danced, their meditation would be way better. Some people are good at listening to guided meditation. Some people, listening to a drum beat helps them. There's so many different ways to meditate. Sitting in water can be more meditative. You just have to find, it's just that place of inner peace and inner quiet. And sometimes we have to experiment and explore to find it, but you can't just do it the way everybody says. You have to find your own way. So I think it's important. I meditate every day, usually twice a day, usually in the morning and at night. And sometimes, when I see clients, I feel like I'm meditating pretty much a lot of that time too. But I think it's super important.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like I'm slacking lately. I gotta get on a 2-a-day regimen.
Well, there's this weird thing. Yeah, there's a weird thing happening right now where I'll have weeks where I can't meditate at all. And I'm like, what the hell? I feel like we are going in jumps. We as the human race are having jumps in frequency, or we get like downloaded or upgraded. And then it's almost like we're kind of getting our sea legs back. And I feel like, well, I've meditated and asked them. There are periods of times now when we are not supposed to meditate, when we're acclimating, we're rebalancing, we are, like bringing what we learned into our daily life, and then we'll move back into where we can meditate. And I have several psychic friends that have been experiencing that too, where we used to be able to meditate all the time. And sure, sometimes there's good meditations, sometimes there's bad meditations. Well, not bad, but not so great. But
oh my God, I'm always telling Claire about my dud meditations, and she's like, no such thing. And I'm like, well, I want to see weird shit. I want to see my, but I'm definitely in a period where it's just like, okay, I'm relaxing, but I'm not accessing things that I have been able to access in rather recent weeks.
It's kind of like Spirit's making us take a time out lately, And I think it has a lot to do with where the Earth's shifting and what's happening around us. Or it may be that with so much going on in the collective consciousness, it might be like, nah, you need to just stay out of that space for a while until things around you calm down, because you're too sensitive to go there. Or, I think there's a lot of reasons for it. But don't beat yourself up. I mean, that's totally the opposite of what you want out of meditation, is to beat yourself up and move into self.
Yeah. No, and I feel like that's one thing, that's one of the many things you taught me too. It's just like, chill out.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some like profoundly mind-blowing meditations, and I've had hundreds of, probably thousands of mediocre, like, that's it, Yeah.
See, Claire, even Patty has duds.
Oh yeah.
But that's one thing.
There's no such thing.
I'm just going to continue to disagree with you. But
it's okay.
Okay, so I like moved on to a different chapter in the Eckhart Tolle book that I'm reading, and he was talking about bringing your awareness into your body, and that's something that I had never considered before, and I did it, and it was the fucking weirdest thing, and I want your takes on this. I'm just like reading in bed last night, and he suggests doing this, and I'm like, okay. It was almost like I brought my energy down from my brain or crown and just put it in my body, and I keep doing it, and it has this like instant sensation of calmness and oneness. It is very bizarre, but I keep holding my breath when I do it too, which is weird. But like, what is that?
Claire, what do you think it is? Claire's bobbing her head up and down. I want to hear what you have to say.
You're embodying yourself. Like you are, like, I think that we tend to not be in our body necessarily always. And when you bring your focus in, well, first of all, I think it's dope that it was that easy for you to just do
Thanks.
it.
Agreed.
Like, that's great. Like, a lot of people can't. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And one of the things that I will do with people in the studio, or when trying to teach them how to like ground or how to meditate, is I'll ask them basically the same thing, but I'm like having them close their eyes and say, bring your awareness to your big toe. Can you feel your big toe? Can you feel just your belly button? Can you feel just your left shoulder blade? And it's like, it makes you go in and well, I do think it quiets your mind because it focuses you. But to bring you in to your body, I think we spend so much time in our mind. To actually go into our body and sense it is really good for us. To like have an awareness of what our body is doing and how it feels and how we are a part of it. Because I think that sometimes we just think it's this thing that carries around our mind.
Beautifully said, Claire.
I don't know.
That was
That's
beautiful.
It. Thanks.
So I totally agree with everything Claire said. For me, I'm wondering if it's when you're if you're grounding. For me, that grounding is like, oh, I'm home. Like, whew, like that's settled. Like I feel heavy and present instead of flighty and bouncing all over the place. I feel like anchored and connected. And so for a lot of people, bringing their energy through their crown and working it down through their chakras down into their body will do that. So I'm thinking you grounded.
I think you're fucking right because I sense that you're right, and like last night it happened instantly, and I was like, I've never felt this before, and I've always had a big question mark hanging about grounding. Like I do it, I visualize it, I do it, but I've never felt it.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yeah. I know. I was going to say, I think you grounded for the first time, but I didn't want to be that presumptuous too.
That's crazy.
No, I love that. And I think
it felt like
that whoosh. Yeah. It feels almost like a pelvic tilt to me. When I used to do it through the root, it's almost like, ugh, like you're fully sitting on your butt in the right way. Like you're totally anchored, or something.
It's very bizarre, but it is like almost, it's not necessarily weighted downward. It's really very much just like a centering and a balancing of energy on my body or in my body. But I think that's so okay. That's very cool for one thing. Thank you for helping me figure that out, because I think you're very right. But I find it interesting that his book is all about like watching your thoughts and almost separating yourself from your mind, which is part of your body. And then I get to this part and he's like, go in your body. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I thought we were just spending all this time getting out of it. But it is, what it did was incredible.
Yep. So grounding is when we are connecting with the earth, the vibration of this existence. Centering is when we're bringing in our higher self. And if you can do the thing is you want to do both at one time. And it sounds like you did both. And
Yeah.
so that's that balance of, oh, I'm totally connected, but I'm fully here at the
I'm
same
so
time.
excited.
Yeah. So books. I have a really hard time with Eckhart Tolle, and I know that's like so like not okay to say, because
It's
he's
okay.
It
It's
is
safe
okay.
here.
We
I
totally
start
don't
He's
reading.
got
care.
that chin beard.
Yeah. When I read his book, I'm just like, what?
Mhm.
Like it's one of those things where I have to keep rereading and rereading. So this is the thing. There's so many books out there. There are so many teachers. I think it's easy for someone to get lost in a place of searching and listening
Yeah.
to other people's opinions
Mhm.
and views and lose themselves. Now, I was working with I was taking my psychic classes. I was working with an Ayurvedic doctor. I was seeing a therapist. I was taking a witchcraft course. There were like many. I was doing all these things, and at one point
Jesus.
I'm like, I don't even know what the hell is my own thought anymore. And I quit everything at once.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing I ever did, because it allowed me to figure out what works for me and what resonates with me, and look back on everything I learned to be like, oh, I like this and this, but I'm going to let go of that and that, and
Yeah.
really figure out who I am. And that's what this process is all about. It's not about understanding somebody else's theory
Mhm.
or meditating in a way that somebody else suggests. It's about finding yourself and finding your own truth. And I feel like,
Mhm.
you know, and I'm a teacher, and that's what I tell people: just take what resonates with you and let go what doesn't. And if you don't like me, let me know and I'll give you your money back, because this is all about helping.
Impossible.
It's about helping you open doors and find your own way and find empowerment within yourself, rather than belonging to a specific belief system or religion or community. And those things can be wonderful as long as there's freedom within those to be yourself.
Mhm. I love that so much. I think that's
Well,
amazing advice.
I am curious, what are some of your favorite books? Because like I loved A New Earth,
Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle. That changed my brain, and it sent me on a path of really knowing myself better, and which is, I don't think that you would be like, it's bad, Claire, that was a bad book. um, but what are books that you resonate with that nobody should just take as,
Yeah.
gospel, but I am
So
curious.
the Anadea Judith book, The Wheels, what the hell is it? What's the
Wheels of Life,
Wheels of
300,000
Life?
copies
Oh
sold.
yeah,
Yeah.
Wheels of Life.
I just dove. I rarely, other than novels, rarely read those type of books word for word. I'm kind of like intuitive flipping it. Oh, I'm supposed to read this section. Oh, I'm supposed to read this section, kind of thing. That book I
Mhm.
read word for word over and over. I love that book, and I
Yeah.
really use the chakra system a lot. And so, yeah. The other book that I have used more as a reference book than any book I've ever owned in my life is Animal Speak by Ted Andrews. And it is more of an indigenous people's view of our messages we get from the animal kingdom. So this can be
Mhm.
animal spirit guides, animal totems. This can be messages from animals. And you can look it up. And I look things up in this book all the time. If there's a blue jay doing weird stuff, I'm going to look up blue jay in the book. I came home and my husband was outside hosing blood off his leg. And I said, what the hell happened to you? And he had been on a bike ride. He said, I rode my bike into a bear. And I said, excuse me? He was riding on a dirt road up above our house. A bear came out. He ran into the side of the bear. They both fell. The bear got up
Oh
and
my
left.
God.
Now, this is not a coincidence. This is not something that happens on a regular basis to people. So right away, I'm like,
No.
sit down. What does a bear have to say? So it'll say, a bear represents this and this and this. And this is what you might want to look at. If you've had encounters with a bear, these are some questions to ask in your life. So there are times when a bear is not his animal totem. There are, or a spirit, cultural appropriations. I shouldn't say that. A spirit guide, animal spirit guide. So, it's not his spirit guide. However, there was a clear message there from him. You might be like, I am seeing deer everywhere I go.
Mhm.
What is it with deer? Well, I would be like, where's my book? And I'd look up deer.
Yeah.
Now we can ask, we can say, what is this? But I actually think it's more fun to look it up in the book and then have spirit fill in the blanks, rather
Totally.
than just ask, what is it? Because you can ask what it is. But that's a book that I totally love. And then I have a huge library of witchcraft books. I have such a strong connection to witchcraft from being little, but also I have really strong past lives there. Traditional witchcraft, not Wicca. I'm more into the traditional. And so I have many, many books that I adore and love on traditional European witchcraft. Too many to even mention names, but that's something that I read that and my blood gets moving and I get excited and I get inspired and I go, forage for herbs and put together a spell or something. So those are the books that I use right now.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of our like seeking and I don't want to fall into that trap of being like an over seeker. And I think like your advice is really incredible to just let things come sometimes too. But sometimes like we call it pod fodder because now we have a podcast where we record weekly and it's like I gotta kind of be reading something to a degree
because I'm not
because
gonna.
You are, Claire, you are right now.
I know.
No, but like it's like at some point we have to like keep the momentum going, but I do think that's really good advice that of course not everything that we get turned on to or have access to is the way, and we have to just stick with what resonates with us.
Yeah, and that just because somebody that knows more than us taught us something doesn't mean that that's gospel. And we have to do that. Like if it doesn't feel good, don't do it.
Yeah.
Even if I told you to do it, you don't have to.
Exactly. And we want to learn. And I think learning about things that don't resonate is just as important about picking up on things that do. But if you find yourself stuck in seeker mode, you might need a little vacation because it might really help reset things for you.
Yeah. I really like that.
So you can actually take in more.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice. Things.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, I think we probably should start to wind down here because we've been picking your brain for 90 minutes. This is a weird one, but I think you have a general idea of who our audience is. Do you have any messages for them?
I think regardless of who your audience is, it's about trusting yourself. And, if something magical happens, own that and be like, wow, that was magical. And try not to be like, oh, maybe I made that up. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe na. There's so much magic in the world that we just overlook or make excuses for. So trust yourself, err on the side of, yeah, I really saw that. Or let your default be that the magic part is what exists. I was with my family recently and we were in Mount Shasta and we were in the little town. We're walking down the street. It was one of the back streets. There were no trees around us. And I was walking in front and all of a sudden this raven feather starts falling. And I have a raven thing starts falling straight from the sky. And I had a sun hat on, so I didn't see it till it got in my vision. And instead of flowing side to side with the breeze, it was falling straight down, doing these little curves right in front of me, slow-mo. And I turn around and look at my family and they're all looking at me wide-eyed, like, is this really happening? And we all stop and it's slowly right in front of my face, stops, and it lands in a bush right next to me. And I pick it up and I look at my husband and I start bawling. And he just gives me a hug because he knows that I see magic in that. Like that was huge to me. And so I'm like, oh my God, can you believe that happened to my son? Can you believe that? He's like, yeah, Mom, saw it. Like they thought that was weird. I thought, and there's no trees around. Like, where the hell did this come from? But my husband's smiling at me because he knows how meaningful these things are to me. And so for me, I could have been like, oh, that's so cool. And then be like, oh, if, there was a building across the street, it could have blown from the building. I mean, maybe if I didn't have my sun hat on, I could have seen that it maybe a bird flew over. No bird flew over, but like I could come up with excuses, or I could be in a moment of magic, and I choose to be in that moment of magic. And so that is what I suggest. Allow yourself to believe and experience it, and you will get more and more of it.
Yes. It's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Bring on the magic.
More
So
magic.
beautiful.
More
I mean,
magic.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let life be magical.
Yeah. Let that be your default.
Totally. So good.
So if I may, I would like to share a couple things that I have coming up, because I'm about to make a big announcement. You guys might hear about it here before we even let our podcast out with it. But I have some new offerings that are coming out in January. I am offering a spiritual empowerment coaching, which has not been publicly offered yet. These two girls did it, but Spirit put us together. And so that will be coming out. And then also I am going to be offering Witch School. Witch School 101. So this will be an online course, but we will be doing rituals together. We'll be talking about the history, the difference between Wicca and traditional, all the witchy terms, what a witch means. And it's helping you tap into your inner witch and what it means to be a modern witch in this day and time. So those are two offerings that are coming out. I am not offering readings at this time. I was booked out almost 2 years, and I really would like to connect with as many people as I can. And working one-on-one readings is just not helping me reach as many people. And so I'm kind of shifting things that way. There will be hopefully by October 1st, there will be a waitlist button on my website, which is wingandether.com or pdavispsychic.com, where you can sign up for the Witch School. And if you do that, you'll be given the specifics and the details first, and a early bird special. And then you can find out about my other classes by getting on my mailing list. And so this next year, 2024, is going to be a year of classes and public speaking and offerings. I'm also going to be offering a little bit later in the year a coaching and support group for professional healers. So where those that work in this field have some place to come, get support. And, what do we do about an entity I picked up from a client? And how do I work with clients that are difficult? And how do I keep my emotions intact, when I'm doing a reading for somebody? So there's some fun things coming up. So if you can get on my website and join my mailing list, that's great. I also announced everything on my Instagram, which is at Wing and Ether. And Ether is AETHER. So that's what's going on with me. And
amazing. That
we
is
will
so
have
exciting.
all of these linked into our notes, and I am super excited.
Pretty sure I saw Claire drooling.
I'm like, witchcraft with Patty.
Yeah. Like,
So I would just like to say that you two are gems. I am so honored to be here, and it's been so lovely getting to know both of you. You're both such magical women through the coaching, and you're doing good work and important work. And you should take the time to pat yourself on the back for this. This is going out and reaching many, many people and making a huge difference, not only in individual lives, but in the planet and where the human race is headed. So thank you for your work.
Oh, Patty, now we're going to cry.
Now we're going to cry again.
Thank you so much. And we are, I mean, you know how we feel about you. We were like, we're interviewing Yoda today. We are just like so honored that you could be our first guest. And I hope that it paves the way for more beautiful interviews to share with people. And it was awesome. I can't wait to get it out there.
Yeah, I'm so happy to introduce our peeps to you. You are a gift and a wealth of knowledge that I just adore.
Thank you, Claire.
Me too.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Patty. Okay, should we sign off? This is so sad.
I
don't want it to stop.
Everything has to stop sometime.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was super fun.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we did. Be sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss a new episode. If you liked today's episode, please consider leaving a review to help the other psychics find their way here.